My name is Tammy Bradford. I'm the manager of the Creston Museum, and this is a Creston History Short. Let's go back 70 years to 1947. This was a really big year in Canada and in the Creston Valley. The Second World War was over. Most of the soldiers and female service people had returned. Economic prosperity was returning. The population was booming. Business was booming. There was a lot happening in Canada in 1947. And we see a lot of this echoed in what was happening in Creston in 1947. The servicemen and women coming back had learned trades and other skills in the military. They were not returning to the farms they had left. They were returning, opening new businesses, going into trades. They needed places to live. Their families were selling off orchard land, subdividing it to give their children a start to create their own retirement nest egg. We see hundreds of acres of former orchard land being subdivided and turned into residential neighborhoods, used for schools, the present-day rec center that was built in 1947. All of these things were happening on former orchard land. It's not to say that the importance of agriculture was dropping. If anything, it was increasing through agricultural intensification. And again, this is something that we see all across Canada. Instead of planting standard size trees that would be planted 30 feet apart, their move was towards smaller dwarf trees that could be planted as little as 3 feet apart. So instead of 48 trees to an acre, you've got 350 trees to an acre. So agricultural production is skyrocketing. The amount of fruit being produced here is incredible. Packing sheds are expanding. Jobs in the packing sheds are expanding. The Canadian Pacific Railway is creating new shipping staff positions called a fruit agent. I know the guy who was the first fruit agent in Creston in 1947, he didn't really like the title, but he really enjoyed the job, making sure that the fruit was packed and shipped properly, sent out to markets across the country and even around the world. We also have the population booming. This is the start of the baby boom after all. So we've got schools expanding, we've got a brand new high school being built, we've got recreation facilities being built to take the place of older ones that simply could not meet the demand. We have roads being built all the way up the lake, what we now call the East Shore. That road was at least being expanded and improved in 1947. We've got a new ferry, the MV Anscombe, being launched because the previous ferry, the SS Nasukan, simply couldn't handle the amount of traffic that's happening. And because of this mobility, we see for the first time Creston itself becoming a hub for the outlying communities. Prior to the war, each community had been very much self-sufficient. They had their own schools, their own churches, their own stores, services, recreational facilities, granted some more developed than others, but the communities were entities in and of themselves. There was contact between them, but traveling from, say, West Creston to Creston or Erickson to Creston was a fairly significant event. You might only do it once a week, once every couple of weeks. After the war, everything became much more centralized in Creston, and the new mobility with cars becoming an essential rather than a luxury meant that people could now drive into town, work in town, and then go home to the outlying areas in the evenings, or part-time farmers and working in town. We see a lot of that happening in the 1940s as well. 1947 is also the year of the downtown expansion boom here in Creston. And this goes to the economic and the commercial prosperity that we see all across the country. In order to keep returned soldiers working, all of the wartime production that in the 1940-1945 period had been geared towards turning out military equipment and supplies was now transformed into producing stuff that people wanted in their everyday lives. So instead of building tanks, we're building cars. Instead of building military radio receivers, we're building radios that you can have in your living room. We're building televisions and marketing all of this stuff because now all of a sudden there's all of this production. They needed to create a demand. The baby boom certainly helped with that. But we see businesses coming into Creston that never existed before. TAC Toyota's Creston Electric, for example, is a prime example where it's a new business. It's run by, in this case, a Japanese person who had been interned during the Second World War and then chose to come to Creston and establish a business and actually became a very well-respected member of the community. We've got servicemen who are coming in, and like I say, they're not going back to the farms, they are establishing trades. So we've got a lot of new businesses, plumbing businesses, car repair businesses, this sort of thing. All of this is happening, and it's really starting to happen about 1947. The downtown area is expanding from about a block and a half long to 3 or 4 blocks long. Businesses are being moved back 10 feet on each side of the main street because it had just been turned into the provincial highway and needed to be wider to accommodate all of this new traffic that's going down it. And on top of that, a lot of the buildings themselves that were moved back, the owners took this opportunity to modernize, renovate, and enlarge. We've got the Creston Hotel enlarging, we've got the Grand Theatre being completely renovated, the Bank of Commerce, which very soon became the Village Council, or Council Hall, was also extensively modernized and renovated. So we see a complete transformation both in the society of the Creston Valley and in its physical appearance as well. I'm Tammy Bradford, and this has been a Creston History Short.